Module 3 covers chapters 5 and 6. As we start with chapter 5, we're going to do an introduction to social media platforms and then begin talking about the specific social networking sites that companies use for social media marketing. So let's talk about networking theory first. Social networking and social networking sites are based on networking theory, which has been around for years. And networking theory explains how traditional word-of-mouth marketing became electronic word-of-mouth marketing to allow for information to be transmitted quickly online over the internet. And so networking theory backs up everything that we talk about in social media marketing and online communication. So there's a couple terms we're going to go over just that kind of go with that networking theory and we'll use as we talk about social networking sites. So in networking theory, a node is a member of a network. So it's one person who's using the network at a point in time. When we talk about a social network, that's a set of socially relevant nodes. So it's a group of people who get together who are connected by a relationship. Now, some of the nodes that are in a social network are more influential than others. And basically what that says is that they have a bigger presence online. And so we're going to come back to that point of influential nodes as we move into our content development chapters later in this course. But for now, we need to know that some nodes are more influential than others, but all nodes who are connected by a relationship get together in a social network. And then finally, there's interactions. And so on a social network, there are interactions which are behavior-based actions that tie nodes together. So just because you're all in a social network or you're all connected, each node is connected by a relationship, doesn't necessarily mean that they're interacting together. But they do have interactions, and these bring them together. And so a couple examples of an interaction might be talking online over chat or email, attending an online event together, watching a webinar together, commenting on the same blogs, commenting on the same photos or videos. Those would all be interactions that nodes have on a social network. And so that's just a little bit of background on networking theory and a couple of terms we'll use as we move forward and talk about social networking sites over the next couple of chapters and modules. So that covers networking theory. Now we're going to actually talk about social media platforms. And so we're going to get into the zones of social media marketing. If you're in your textbook in Chapter 5, you'll notice that they introduce 13 types of social media platforms. And we are going to cover kind of a broad range of those 13. We're going to go through a bunch of those. But there's a different model that we're going to use to talk about social media marketing, and that's the 4 zones of social media marketing, which was created by Tracy Tootin and Michael Solomon a few years back as they started really doing some research into social media marketing theory and the best ways to communicate with consumers online. And so they've put together this model of 4 zones, and so we're going to break out the next couple of chapters and modules to look at some of these zones, starting with social community. But we will get into social publishing as we move into future modules, and we'll touch on social commerce and social entertainment in this course as well. And there's an article that you need to read in the module that kind of gives a little background framework on the 4 zones of social media marketing and explains in depth kind of each of the 4 zones. But let's focus on today, social community. The social community zone describes platforms that are based on relationships and commonalities between people. And so they feature two-way communication, conversation, and collaboration. Most of the social networking platforms that you use today will fall into this category. So we're talking Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+. Those are the big 4. There's a few others that fall into this social community zone that we'll touch on. But those are the big ones. They're the most popular. They're the most used social community, social networking platforms. And all of these platforms emphasize individual contributions to a community. So each individual is contributing to these sites, but they are coming together in a relationship format. And so as we start talking about the social community and social networking sites, we're going to focus on the connection between people and the relationships between people. And so let's define that social networking site a little bit more. When we talk about these social networking sites, and specifically today, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, these are online services where members can establish relationships based on friendship or shared interests or business connections or any other type of connection that they might have. And so, like I said, all of these sites allow members to build a public or private profile, and the point is that they can specify who they want to connect with and who they do not want to connect with. So you can accept friends, you can reject friends, you can block friends, you can invite friends to join. It's all about connecting with others, but the user gets to specify who they connect with. Social networking sites really simplify the process of sharing information with others, such as interests, events, statuses, and photos. And so when you go onto a social networking site, that's one of your goals, to share information in a very simple way with a large group of people at a singular time. And so there's a really interesting history of social networking sites in your textbook. We're not going to cover that in this course just due to our crunch time frame, but it is a really great read on kind of how social networks came to be and who the first social networks were and how they operated, and it tells how we evolved into where we are today. So I recommend you check that out. It's on page 79 of your textbook. So as we talk about social networking sites, who are the big players? You already know probably who the biggest players are. This table here shows all networks that are active in the United States, but it does not include video sharing sites. So YouTube is not on here. If we included YouTube, YouTube would actually fall in that 2 to 3 kind of range there. And again, this is only social networking sites active in the United States. I did not include social sites there are social sites larger than LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google+, that are more prominent in Europe and Asia that are not on this chart. But what we are looking at here, in the first column is the name of the social network, and you've probably heard of most of these, if not all of them. And then in the middle column, you'll see their estimated unique monthly visitors, and these are in millions. And this data is as of July 1st, so it's very, very recent. But you'll see Facebook has over 1 billion now monthly visitors, and those are unique, so individual people. There's a big jump when you get down to Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest. But those numbers are still pretty big, over 310 million visitors unique each month. And another key thing to note is that these are active users. So these are people who are posting at least once a month on the social networking site. And then you see the launch date there in the far column. And so this is a good visual to see just how many people are using social networking sites and why it's so critical for brands and companies to have a presence on those sites to communicate with all of these people. Okay, so now that we know what social networks are, how popular they are among consumers, we're going to talk about why companies would want to use these platforms to market to their customers. So we're going to start very general, and then we're going to get into the very specific social platforms. Marketing on social network has several advantages for companies, and the big ones are that social networking sites allow companies to find talent, so to find employees. Social networking sites are a great way to build brand awareness. They help companies find new customers, and it's a very easy way to conduct market research. And so when a company first decides to use social networking sites, one of the key decisions that they make is which social networking sites to use. It's important that companies try to optimize their marketing investments. They also need to optimize the content that they're posting and then consider their business impact. What impact is this social networking site having on the overall business? It's pretty much impossible. I would say it's virtually impossible to be active on all social networking sites, and social media platforms in general. So we're not even talking about social media here. We're talking about social networking sites specifically. So it's virtually impossible for companies to be active. Or maybe it's a better way to phrase it. It's impossible to use them effectively and have a presence on all of them. An article that is posted on convinceandconvert.com, which is also in the module if you want to take a look at it. They did some research and they state that in social media it really is all about quality and not just quantity. And so the author of that article made a couple of valid points for choosing 2 or 3 platforms to focus on for social networking sites. And he said that choosing 2 to 3 networks really allows you to post consistent and highly engaging content because you have time to focus on what you are posting and the message that you're trying to promote versus having 10 to 12 social networking sites and trying to just get something on all of them. And then he also said that choosing this limited number of social networks really helps you reach your specific target audience and encourages them to connect. And so connecting with your customers leads to a conversion, which leads customers to sales. And so that's what we want ultimately with our marketing programs. So focusing on 2 to 3 social networks is the best number for most companies. Now, larger companies will have presence on more than that, but 2 to 3 where you're posting consistent and highly engaging content is the way to go. And so those are some overall advantages of marketing on social networks and why you want to optimize your presence on social networks. In the next lecture, we're going to start talking about each individual social network from a marketing perspective.